Assalamu alaikum, dear listeners. Peace be unto you. How are you doing all? I'm sure and I pray that you are happy and healthy. Welcome to the fourth episode of English Podcast with Asif. Dear listeners, I'm an English teacher. Have been teaching English language for almost 6 years as of now. And I believe that learning English language or any other language begins with listening. And this podcast or these podcasts serve an aim of helping you listen and understand language and get adapted with the language and hence learn the language effectively and the way it is supposed to be learned. Many of you might be thinking, I've been studying English throughout my school days, maybe for 5 years, 6 years, or 10 or 15 years. All of you have been. But still, I ain't able to speak. How come? What's the reason behind it? Well, I'm talking about you, okay? I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about everyone, whosoever has learned his mother tongue. Well, I've spent only 2 to 3 years of my early childhood when I was not conscious of learning, and I mastered my mother tongue within those 2 to 3 years. How come? What is the reason? Have you ever thought about it? That means the way you've been seeing at the learning language in your school and following it religiously accordingly is a wrong way, a wrong perception, and in other words, a wrong paradigm. You have to change the way you think. You have to change the way you look at the things in order to bring some change and bring some results. If one way is not helping you to solve your problems, you have to change the way you look at the problem. Why am I saying all this about problems, about changing the paradigm, changing the perception? The reason is that we have a guest today who is going to share some knowledge about the topic paradigm. 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 That means how we see and look at something, how we perceive something, how we look at something. And another term that is paradigm shift. So if you are in a problem or you're facing some problem and the problem is there that you are not able to solve it, the reason is that you are looking at the problem in a certain way. And if you have to change it, you have to change your paradigm, the way you look at the problem. As far as the previous question that I just touched, that how to teach and learn English language, we'll be having someday a podcast on that. But for now, we have to talk about paradigm shift. So we have with us one of my, I should say, great orators among my students, Miroun. She's a 11th class student, studies science. She's also an avid, passionate speaker. She's always ready for anchoring. She's so passionate about anchoring. Whenever I conduct any program in my school or outside the school in any institute, when I ask her to be the anchor or to anchor the program, she's always ready for that. So it's her really passion to be an anchor, to speak in public. So without any delay, I ask her to kick off her speech and share her knowledge with us about paradigm. Thank you, Miroun, for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Miroun Mushtaq. First, I want to thank Asif sir for giving me an opportunity to join this podcast. And today I am going to talk about The Power of a Paradigm. Author John Gardner once said, most ailing organizations have developed a functional blindness to their own defects. They are not suffering because they cannot resolve their problems, but because they cannot see their problems. And Einstein put it this way: the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. These statements underscore one of the most profound learnings, that is, if you want to make minor, incremental changes and improvements, work on practices, behavior, or attitude. But if you want to make significant quantum improvement, then work on your paradigms. The word paradigm stems from the Greek word paradigma, originally a scientific term but commonly used today to mean a perception, assumption, theory, frame of reference, or lens through which you view the world. It's like a map of a territory or city. If inaccurate, it will make no difference how hard you try to find your destination or how positively you think. You will stay lost. And if accurate, then diligence and attitude matter, but not until. Okay, for instance, how did they attempt to heal people in Middle Ages? The answer is bloodletting. And what was the paradigm? The bad stuff is in the blood. Get it out. Now, if you did not question this paradigm, what would you do? Do it better, do it faster, do it more painlessly, do statistical quality records, and organize around brilliant marketing plans so that you can advertise. We have the highest quality, world-class bloodletting unit in the world. Can you imagine what happened when the germ theory was discovered? When Samuel Fungari, Pasteur of France, and other empirical scientists discovered that germs are a primary cause of disease? Well, it was the germ theory that opened whole new fields of research. It guides healthcare practices to the present day. And that's the power of an accurate paradigm. It explains and then it guides. But the problem is that paradigms, like traditions, die hard. Flawed paradigms go on for centuries after a better one is discovered. For instance, though history book talks about George Washington dying of a throat infection, he probably died of bloodletting. The throat infection was the symptom of something else. Since the paradigm was that the bad stuff was in the blood, they took from him several pins of blood in a 24-hour period. You and I are counseled not to give more than 1 pin every 2 months if we are well. Let me talk about paradigm shift. A paradigm shift is when a fundamental or monumental change or disruption occurs in current processes, models, or perceptions. And let me illustrate it by an example. The internet created a paradigm shift in the way business is conducted. Email and scan replaced the fax machine and courier services. Orders for securities can now be placed directly by the client via internet and are sometimes executed in seconds. The new knowledge worker age is based on a new paradigm, one entirely different than the thing paradigm of the industrial age. Let's call it whole person paradigm. At the core, there is one simple, overarching reason why so many people remain unsatisfied in their work and why most organizations fail to draw out the greatest talent, ingenuity, and creativity of their people and never become truly great, enduring organizations. It stems from an incomplete paradigm of who we are, our fundamental view of human nature. The fundamental reality is human beings are not things needing to be motivated and controlled, they are four-dimensional: body, mind, heart, and spirit. Different words are often used, but they reflect same four universal dimensions of life. They also represent the four basic needs and motivations of all people, that is, to love, to live, to learn, and to leave a legacy. This was what I talked about, the power of a paradigm. So, begin today and have a shift in your paradigms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miroun, for this insightful speech about paradigm. So, dear listeners, we learned today that if your paradigm, that means the way you look at the things, the way you look at the problem, if it is wrong, the result is going to be wrong. There is going to be an effect of your paradigm on your personality. If you're doing something and you're trying to achieve something and that's not achieved, that means the way you look at it is not up to the mark. See, remember that sometimes the paradigm can be productive, okay, very productive, and sometimes paradigm can be wrong, absolutely wrong. That doesn't bring any result. Like I gave the example of learning language. We have been learning language in our schools for around 10, 13, 15 years. There are people who have done masters in certain subject, okay, have been burning midnight oil, reading, doing well in exams, but still they are not able to express themselves, because language is so important in expressing yourself that if you have a lot of knowledge, that does not matter until and unless you are able to share it through your language, maybe speaking or writing. Why aren't you able to do that? Why aren't you able to learn that language in the school while you just spent 2 to 3 years while you were a small kid on your mother tongue and you mastered it? You do not commit mistakes, you speak fluently. The reason is that the way we learned our mother tongue is not the same way we are trying to learn English or any other language. Okay, so the task is with you. You have got to look at your mother tongue, how you learned it, and the perception you had at that point of time, or the atmosphere that you had at that point of time. So apply the same on English language and then learn it. So let me know the conclusion after thinking about your paradigm on learning English language, and look at the paradigm you had when you were a small kid. How did you learn the language? What steps did you go through in order to master the language that is your mother tongue? Let us know in the comment box so that others learn and I too may get some ideas. Okay, I learn from my students, I learn from my listeners, I learn from my audience, okay, and I try to share my knowledge whatsoever I have. Okay, so have a shift in your paradigm if your problems aren't solved. If you want to learn more about paradigm, I suggest you to read this beautiful book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. He has discussed 7 habits of highly effective people, and someday I may talk about those 7 habits. And this writer, this author, Stephen R. Covey, before he talks about these 7 habits, he talks about paradigm and paradigm shift. Okay, so if you are interested in learning more about it, then I suggest you to read that book. Okay, so today we learned how to use our paradigm in order to deal with the problems we are facing. There is a lot more to learn about paradigm. So use your mind, think on your own, don't bank upon other sources. So let you ask yourself first, because education is not filling yourself with information, it is actually taking out the knowledge, taking out the insights that are already in you. So thank you very much for being patient in listening to this podcast. If you have any questions, any queries, any suggestions, please write in the comment box. Like this video, and if you want others, your loved ones, your relatives, your friends to learn something from this podcast, so please share it. And if you are new to this podcast, to this channel, so please hit the subscribe button and get the updates of the upcoming videos. Thank you very much. God be with you.